Hello everyone, Pyra Draculea here. I was just getting ready. I know, shocking, I'm actually showing my face on camera, right? Normally you just see my hands as I'm like moving through stuff, but I am getting ready to start a new little, kind of more like a YouTube series where I figured I would do some videos where I'm drawing each of one character per video and talking about the character, introducing them so I can refer people back as those projects hopefully take off. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do like a meet and greet series with my characters, maybe I should do one for myself first. Because I don't think I've ever done that on this channel. Granted, that's because I kind of have assumed mostly the people who watch my videos are my friends and family who I have guilt-tripped into watching my videos. So they kind of already know some of the answers. But it occurred to me I should do like a proper sort of introduction. We're not in my studio, we're in the corner of my living room because my studio, well, you know how messy all this looks? Well, times that by 1,000. The studio is kind of a nightmare right now. Outside like the one little desk area. Plus the couch is comfy. So here we go. With my little introduction video. Hopefully I don't ramble on too long. I'm not going to answer every question I imagine people have, but I imagine really nobody has. But I thought I would start with a few. So please allow me to introduce myself. I am a middle-aged broad of nominal wealth and questionable taste. My name's Pyra Draculea, but, I mean, realistically, it's somewhere, I'm going to get all dyslexic. One of those corners possibly has my name, if this is coming up on random feeds, with, like, the video title over my head. And certainly if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, it says my name down there. But on the random chance, my name is Pyra Draculea. Formerly known as Maclu. Not that really hey, I gotta be careful if I'm doing this. I look like I have no neck. I swear I do, really. Formerly known as Maclu back in the day, a long time ago. Like 15 years ago? Oh my god. Well, 15 years ago, since I was putting out my debut EP, but I used to make industrial, electronic, experimental noise type. I say music? Could say music, could say crap. Depends on your opinion. As Maclu, M-A-Q-L-U, and at that time I used to be on the college radio charts a little bit across Canada. And I did have some fans. Like I had at least one random dude who moved across the country trying to find out where I lived. Which is why we don't see the outside of my house. I'm sure he's moved on to somebody more interesting by now. It was a long time ago. And I'm sure if he saw me now, it's like, oh god, no, I don't want that broad. But I used to make that kind of stuff, so I had a little bit of a teensy-weensy bit of a forget D-list, Kathy Griffin's show used to be called. I was more on the Q list, I guess, that far down. But I did have some college radio stuff. I had a few fans. I used to actually have a college radio show called The Vampire's Ball on CiTR Radio for, well, over a period of 10 years, but it was over a period of almost 15 years, because it was 2002 to 2006 that I went on hiatus, but I still wrote for Discorder magazine and occasionally had comics in the back of the publication if we had space to fill. And then I went back on air in 2009 and was on until 2015 when I left at the end of April 2015. So I think my name actually is on, or it used to be on CiTR's Wikipedia page. You know what? I didn't add it, I swear to God. Somebody added me as like one of the notable DJs on the station after like Nardwar and what's his face, Mike something or other, I think, who had the Transcendent show, and like George, who had the big reggae show, and then somewhere in the bottom of the list is like, and Pyra Draculea of the Vampire's Ball. It was kind of funny. I don't know if somebody from the station was just adding, you know, whoever they thought were the most prominent DJs, but, or who knows, but I just remember it coming up on my, like, Google alerts one day. I was like, oh, huh, okay, I'm on Wikipedia. Meanwhile, at some point, again, not me, I swear to God, but there used to be very briefly, there was, somebody tried to make a Wikipedia page for Maclu, and I remember that, again, came up on my Google alerts, and then when I looked at it, it was, like, removed because this person isn't actually notable. I was like, well, that's accurate. No, I'm not. But anyway, so that's kind of a long-winded thing. I have a kind of a list of notes, and I even wrote them in, like, a big, fat marker, so I, in theory, wouldn't need to break out the reading glasses, but it's a little fuzzy. This is what happens when you're in your 40s, eh? So anyways, I talked a little bit about that background, what of course that has nothing really to do with my channel now, because I left the music business a long time ago, and like now, I mean, I do visual arts. Although I say now, but I've always done visual arts since I was a little kid. I actually got accepted to Emily Carr for foundation year in like 1996, and I was there one term, and I just did not fit in with that crowd. And so, like, I think by mid-September I had already registered for classwork at UBC, because I was also accepted at the University of British Columbia, at SFU, at UVic and whatnot. So by January, I think I withdrew from pretty much all my classes at Emily Carr. I just dropped out. Just because I had stopped going. I was like, yeah, I guess I should, like, make that official so I don't get a bunch of Fs. And then I was off at UBC and whatnot. But I've always drawn and painted and all that kind of crap. There was actually, I know I haven't, by the time this gets posted, I will have a new Sunday Show and Tell video, because I'm going to film it right after this and edit it tonight. Tonight being Saturday night, because I'm bored and I'm boring, apparently. But I know I've skipped a couple weeks on the Sunday Show and Tells. I had actually filmed a video tour of I found the portfolio that I had submitted for acceptance for Emily Carr that got me accepted. Shockingly enough, because when I look through it now, it's all terrible. It's all garbage. Not all. 90% of it's garbage. 90% of everything's garbage, though. But I filmed a video, and you can already tell I go off on a lot of tangents. I had like 2 hours of footage. I was trying to edit it down to something more reasonable, and I finally just gave up, and I was busy. So I'll reshoot that at a later date. And I actually went off on a tangent that was like 45 minutes about advice for portfolios for high schoolers or whatever, which at some point I should probably do that as a proper video and not just like me like blah 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 blah. So anyways, that's down the line, but was accepted. So qualifications, I guess we're talking qualifications. Do I need any qualifications? I don't need no stinking qualifications. But if anyone's curious about my educational background, so I was briefly at and started skipping classes from Emily Carr's foundation year for one term. I went to UBC. I changed my major like 3 times, but I started out actually Bachelor of Science Geology, but I could not pass Math 100, so I wisely went and changed to the arts department. I was a double major Near Eastern studies, like Babylon and Sumer. This is a whole long talk for another video. But I was interested in Sumerian and cuneiform. And so anyways, I had to work backwards from the PhD I would have had to get if I wanted to be like one of the 5 nerds who can read Sumerian on the planet. There's more than 5, there's like 15. But I wanted to be one of them. So working backwards, it ended up being that I needed an archaeology degree and a Near Eastern studies. So that meant at UBC I was a double major with anthropology and religious studies, because the history of the ancient Near East is under religious studies at that time. Then I had about some health issues in the late 90s. Was away on like academic concession for a year. When I came back, I switched to, I knew I wanted to get in. At that time, I wanted to be in the music industry. I did not get into it for quite a while. But the pathway I saw into it from a I'm going to be practical kind of perspective was to get a tech theater degree, which that didn't happen, but I was in the theater department doing tech theater and and of course they make you do theater history and acting, which I'm a terrible actress. I say that I've done, not professionally, but I've done voice acting for my own projects, which we'll get into in a while. But those are my own to amuse me. That's different than somebody else's script, and who gives a shit, right? So, anyways, I was in tech theater. And then I finally switched to Bachelor of Arts in Music, and then I was just so burned out after, in the early 2000s, I just left. So that was that. At UBC, I eventually did go back to Emily Carr, not for a degree program in the main, like, credit stuff, but I started doing, like, night school, so I have, like, a certificate for graphic design through continuing studies at Emily Carr. I've done some website design. I do all my own website designs, so if they're non-functional, that's my fault. I can tell you right now, one of my sites is broken. Zamo the Destroyer. I really need to fix it. But also that project's been toast for almost not 10 years, but it's been toast for a number of years, so it's kind of low down on the priority list. But anyways, I also went at one point and did the new media design program at BCIT, which again, a lot of web stuff, but we also that's where I learned rudimentary video editing and my first round with audio editing. From there I went to Nimbus School of Recording Arts, did I guess it was a diploma or whatever in audio engineering and music production, and that was like, I was in the second intake, so I went in like 3 months after they started, and that was, I don't know in later years as it got bigger and bigger how much, I mean it was hands-on, but I don't know how much later students got to hang out with like Garth Richardson, but I was one of the ones who was very early when Garth was in there pretty much all the time if he wasn't down in LA. So and that was kind of when I started working on the MacLu thing. Aside from, I did have 1 or 2 clients, but I knew I was taking audio engineering to work on my own stuff, rather than get into really the studio side of things. Although I was encouraged to do that, but honestly my hearing just flat out wasn't good enough to become a mixing or mastering engineer. So anyways, that was that. Later on, going in the future, in a couple years on this channel, you'll probably hear me complaining about schoolwork again, because I do want to finish my degree. But at this point, there's a writing program that I'll be taking at a local university. So that'll be 2026. And I did debate going back and doing a double major with visual arts, and then I looked over the course list and I thought, fuck this. Like, I am well past the point of, I shouldn't be, because you should always be willing to learn, but I just know me, and I get the academic equivalent of road rage. So, like, I am not going to deal well with being told that, okay, your homework is to do a color wheel in gouache and like color gradation, so you need like 15 steps from primary yellow to primary blue and whatnot. I'm just at the point where I can go like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I don't care. I've done similar stuff before. Anyways, I guess what I'm saying is I'm lazy. So I'm going to do the writing program because I'm lazy. Anyways, so I've alluded to a couple projects, and well, probably already at this point when I'm editing the video, I will have been like fading in cover art for Maclu and whatnot, so it's a little more visually interesting than just me sitting on the edge of my sofa slouching in front of my books. Well, one of my bookcases. But we will talk about that in more detail. So I mentioned Zamo the Destroyer. That is it's not the original comic I did, because I've been drawing like random cartoon characters in margins of my notebooks since, you know, certainly since high school. But Zamo was the original project that I put out to the public. That started 2006 to 2009 as a comic done with traditional, basically quasi-traditional comic book methods. So, you know, like a blue line, blue non-photo, blue pencil, underdrawing and then inking on top. And the premise of Zamo was based on a pet iguana I used to have. So Zamo is this obnoxious talking iguana badgering her pet humans, or her pet human, Georgie, and all this sort of stuff. And Georgie was a professional painter, and you're starting to see the autobiographical stuff here. Although, would I qualify as a professional painter? No. Anyways, aspirational, you know what I mean? So that I did as a comic, basically until I started in Nimbus. Then I didn't have time to do that comic anymore. And so that was on hold. Later I brought Zamo back as I mentioned voice acting. I started doing a podcast called The Zamo the Destroyer Show, wherein I would adjust and start doing the Zamo voice. And it was all about Zamo sending these podcasts back to friends and family back home in Colombia, talking about how stupid the pet humans are. So I don't even think that's as extreme of the voice that I used to have on that show. But I would have little weekly episodes of Zamo ranting and raving, and at a certain point I started running out of steam and realized I was repeating myself, and also I made I'll probably do like an episode of this talking just about that project and where I think it went wrong and whatnot. But the podcast version kind of, technically it went on from like 2014 to like 2021. I think it lagged quite a bit in the middle. Like I don't really remember doing regular episodes in like 2018 to 2019, or they might have been like monthly rather than weekly or something. But anyway, so Zamo was the first comic. I already talked about Maclu. When I stopped really doing the music thing, I had a brief foray into like stand-up open mics in Vancouver. So I talk about bands a lot because I'm a music freak, but I care about other stuff too, like the price of gas, taxes, and the breakdown of the family unit. It's true. Without fathers, kids end up with all sorts of terrible outcomes, you know, worse economic outcomes, poor grades. But worst of all was this 21-year-old boy who said to me, "What's an Aerosmith?"
ask your dad. Oh, never mind.
That didn't last that long, but it kind of gave me a basis in comedy writing and whatnot. Well, I guess I had the basis in comedy writing kind of accidentally from Zamo. But a more formalized kind of comedy writing thing, and I used to go up and do stand-up at some of the open mics, mostly at 12 Kings in Vancouver, in East Vancouver on Kingsway. And I had a podcast called Under My Skin. That's been memory hold, because yeah, a lot of it frankly wasn't great. That got me, but it got me involved with a different podcast, which is now also, I think, disappeared. That was called The Dry Shave Show. So I kind of was their news girl, and then at some point I took over the audio production until I left Vancouver. I now live on Vancouver Island. And then that show kind of petered out after, I think about a year after I left. And they did bring it back during lockdowns, but it only lasted like 6 months, and I wasn't involved. Well, I mean, I would watch it live, and I was their chat room moderator, but I wasn't actually on the show. So there's that. Moving forward, I spent a couple of years doing some textile art stuff and whatnot, but that's whatever. Doesn't really apply to the work that I'm doing now. And then, so one of the projects that I started in lockdown, kind of towards the end of lockdown, was I started writing for the Nick White Show. And I'll link to that. But the idea was, Nick is the second biggest rock star of the 1980s, because I've always been obsessed with like 80s rock and roll. And anyways, so Nick, what I did was I built little sets. I used Barbie dolls to set up in tableaus, so those were my cast. And then I did voiceovers. And let me grab a quick sip of water while I'll insert like a clip of the Nick White Show here.
Get up, asshole. We need to talk.
Use more tongue, love.
Dream on, scumbag.
Ugh, bloody hell. I was dreaming about a young Barbara Eden showing me the inside of her bottle.
Well, you would be the expert in crawling up into a bottle. Too bad you seem to be immune to alcohol poisoning.
Huh? Oh, Susie, it's you. Have you seen my new music video?
My name is not Susie, you moron. It's Zosimi. Anyways, you sent me some vile video footage of your filthy cum sock.
Yes, exactly, Susie. Rather arty and innovative, don't you think?
I have no idea at the time of this recording what clip I put in there. I'm sure it's obnoxious, but you get the idea. Anyways, I'll link down below to the channel, because it's all still up there. But anyways, I was writing that stuff, and I've actually got a lot more material written than I ever had the chance to record, so it'll probably come up again in the future. Not as that show, but as either a comic or possibly a novel. We'll see. But anyways, everything in there, I built some set pieces, I built some props. I bought a lot of set pieces and props, which now I've gotten rid of because I'm not doing the show anymore, and won't be doing it in that format again. But all the voices, that's all me. Filming, that's all me. This is basically the reason why I stopped doing that show. Was every minute of screen time is about at least 10 hours of production time, which, so anyways, and the other thing is, if you're doing a lot of voice acting, you're doing particularly voices like Richard. Actually, this is kind of what Richard sounds like, and he's really hard on the voice. It kind of sounds like Gilbert Gottfried on crack cocaine or something. I don't know. Anyways, doing that voice, even for just a few lines. Richard always had to be the last thing I recorded. Nick wasn't as bad, darling, you know. I mean, it's a low voice, and I would also pitch shift it down about 3 semitones, you know, in Pro Tools, darling. But, and Nick wasn't as bad, but Nick has a lot of dialogue, so Nick got to be hard on the throat, too. Podrick, really hard. Can I even do Podrick's voice at this point? I mean, he's kind of like, he's half Rooster, half Lucky Charms leprechaun if they fucked and had a love child who is, like, raised in... Are there even any backwoods in County Kerry in Ireland? I've never been. But I imagine him as sort of being, like, on the hinterlands between County Kerry, which is where my ancestors came from. Some of my ancestors. And County Cork. He's a culture from there, but yeah, Podrick's voice really be kind of hard to do as well. And anyways, so you run into the issue of what happens when you get the flu. So I had started the show, I think, in February, March, like actual production. I think the first episode I posted was like March 2022. The end of June, I had just wrapped up the Nick's Ukrainian Adventure trilogy, and I came down with what was probably COVID, because I lost my sense of smell for like a month and a half, and I completely lost my voice. But I think it was more the fact that I lost my sense of smell. See what happens, I do the voices and then my throat is messed up. We're going to put another clip in here.
Speaking of time, Bon Jovi's spending his out on tour right now, and you're doing what exactly?
Podrick and I are gossiping about the Met Gala. Isn't that right, Podrick?
Is that what you were going on and on about, you gimp? I wasn't listening.
Yes, Podrick, the Met Gala. It's all over the internet and the tabloids. And wait, do they even have internet where you come from? Or tabloids?
I don't waste me precious time reading tabloids. That's for the bloody English, like.
Yes, the Met Gala, one of the biggest see and be seen events on the planet that you got yourself perma-banned from 20 years ago when you puked in Anna Wintour's purse.
So the problem is I lost my normal speaking voice for 2 weeks, but I lost my character voices for 3 or 4 months. So I had wrapped up or posted in like the 3rd week of June, I think, or halfway through June. I was working on a July 4th episode, and then I got sick, and I couldn't make a new episode. The next episode I was finally able to make was in October, and that's called When Nick's Away. And it kind of addresses, in that fictional world, that Nick has been away in a alcoholic stupor for months, and that's why there haven't been any new episodes. So, but I had to accommodate for that. So I basically, what ended up happening was I started a new podcast, a new show, not show. Pardon me, it's not a show. The point is that it's not a show. A new project, which originally was going to be a show. It was originally going to be a puppet show about this guy, this character Glenn, who played in a local tribute band, and he's trying to do a YouTube show about like rock and roll gossip, but his old lady Gigi keeps interrupting him and wanting to gossip about the neighbors and kind of maybe be like a Punch and Judy kind of thing. And I was developing it alongside of working on the Nick White show in the spring of 2022. And then when I got sick and lost my voice, I realized, ooh, this is a problem. Anything where I have to rely on my voice, generally it's going to be fine. But what about when it's not? And obviously, you know, a lot of animation and voice acting stuff and whatnot, like you're working in a season. Like South Park, I think, is down to having like 13 or 14 episodes per season, So, I mean, and obviously they have a whole team, but in terms of, well, Trey Parker and Matt Stone and the other people who do voices on that show, they really only have to do, I mean, I'm sure it's a brutal, like, for one day. I know Trey Parker's had to modify how he does Eric Cartman's voice, where he says the line normally, and then they use plugins to manipulate the sound and make it sound like when he used to do the Cartman voice straight out of his throat, because he just physically can't anymore. But I was I had to suddenly, well, you're kind of hearing that I've had to stop a couple times to take water, just doing those little samples, right? So anyways, and then the issue of getting sick, right? So that made me kind of go, I need to figure out something that doesn't rely on my throat. Because usually it's reliable, but no, sometimes it's not. And then what do you do? Because I wanted to do like an ongoing weekly project, not like here's a burst, and then I go away for a year, and here's a burst, and then I go away for a year. Right? So, anyways, so I start, and the other thing was, I wanted to do like Muppet-sized puppets for Glenn and Gigi, and then I'm starting to think about sets, and where am I going to build this in my frickin' house, and where am I going to store all this stuff? Because when you think about Muppet puppets, like, they're big, like, the bodies would be like this tall, like a ventriloquist dummy type size, and anyways, then it was getting out of hand, and I realized that, plus the other thing was I needed a kind of a rival frenemy kind of character, and that's where Noah Thorson came into being. And he turned out, as I was developing, that he was Gigi's ex-husband and all this, and him and Glenn butt heads, but they've played in bands together. Anyways, I started envisioning this whole world. And I realized that there's no way to do justice to it as a puppet show, but I could draw it, because I've always been drawing, right? And I hadn't had a cartoon project at this point for a number of years. Well, probably, more than a decade, I guess, other than doodling in my sketchbooks and whatnot. So, anyways, thus Noah's Archipelago was born. At some point I may do a video just entirely talking about how all the details of Noah, how that was developed and whatnot. I mean, aside from the Meet the Character episodes that I plan to do, but, you know, how does the show get developed? How do you do the world building? All that sort of stuff. Anyways, so I've been working on Noah since 2022. I am currently working, and it's not a daily comic. I post on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday usually. Unless I have what Noah refers to as an attack of lazy bonitis. And the cartoon, he frequently references the Cartoonist having acute attacks of lazy bonitis when I don't get the comic done on time. Anyways, I am working on an anthology for what will basically be like the first 9 months, I think, of the comic. So hopefully that will be, God willing, I hope so. I wanted to have it done last year by Christmas, and then it didn't get done, and it's still kind of languishing, but it is in progress. And then from there, I do Noah's Archipelago on an iPad, which is relevant just because, you know, I'm drawing the comic and all this, but my background is in, I guess you could say, analog art, painting, and whatnot. So I found that after, I guess, 6 months of working on Noah, that I was sitting there going like, oh, like I'd finish a comic, upload it, or schedule it for the next day, whatever, and then I'd feel like I hadn't done anything artistic that day. And it's really weird because I probably just spent 4 to 5 hours on that comic, but because it's on the iPad, it like doesn't register. So I wanted to, the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, I wanted to be a little more hands-on with art. So that manifested in a couple ways. I took like, I took like a gouache painting class at Vancouver Island School of Art down in Victoria. I took a pastels class. I started taking ceramics classes. I had taken a printmaking class at a workshop at Machosa International Summer School for the Arts in 2022. I started going to printmaking stuff up in Ladysmith and whatnot. So I was building my printmaking practice. So I was starting to work more hands-on, and then I had this idea as well about like, well, when did I used to feel like I was doing a lot of art? And I thought, well, in high school I used to draw a lot. Yeah, I used to fill sketchbooks full of drawings of rock stars and whatnot. Enter the Bono Mouse sketchbook. I'm not going to talk too much about that because there's already like a 45-minute video that I've done on this channel with a tour of that book. So I will link to that, but I will have just posted like a pictures of it or whatever. We'll do that actually right now as I take another sip of water. Anyways, so as I referenced in that sketchbook tour, and also in a further sketchbook tour of the first Ricky B. Rat book, I started drawing Bono as a mouse man, and then that led to this character Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat, and I am currently working on a graphic novel for Ricky. I have a podcast, which I haven't done an episode in a couple months, I'm sorry. I do the Ricky B. Rat podcast. I have not taken a break because my voice was messed up. I've taken a break because I had, scheduling issues. But that's another thing where it's like, I love doing the podcast, but what did I say about being reliant on my voice or on, in this case, scheduling or whatever? But my plan is to start, I've got the podcast scripts. I'm actually working on turning them into a collection of short stories. So, and then, like I said, the graphic novel. And I do weekly, again, I'm supposed to do weekly, schedule has been an issue, marker cartoons with Ricky B. Rat as well. And Ricky and, well, from the perspective of his frenemy, Miles Marev, I had a short story in the Couch and Writers Group anthology that went out last year called 12 Tales of Christmas. I think it's called Christmas in Ratsville is the story, but it's narrated by Ricky's buddy Miles. Well, Miles is Ricky's girlfriend's half-mouse cousin, half-mouse, half-rat. So I have that project on the go as well. And I actually, I've been doing a lot of sketchbook work where Ricky and Miles and his buddies are like interacting with Noah and their world, so stay tuned. Might be something that I'll start posting. We'll just leave it at that. So, I have no idea how long I've been talking, and I can't on the viewfinder tell. But we'll just run through a couple other notes. Well, I already mentioned I'm from Vancouver originally. I'm on Vancouver Island now. Exhibitions, well, there haven't been very many, and really, who cares? They were ages ago. Hopefully in 2026 I'll get some stuff in some local exhibitions. That would be kind of fun, if only to stroke my ego. I talked about college radio and stand-up. Oh yeah, media. So I do have a painting background. There are videos on this channel. I was doing that Vote for Miles painting last summer 2024, which is a acrylic I was going to say it's sort of realism, but not like hyper-realism. Like, it doesn't look like a photograph. It's definitely a painting. But it's also completely not realistic because we don't have mousemen, running for office. But, anyways, I paint historically mostly acrylic, also some watercolor. I'm starting to get into oils. The issue is space for drying. I might start kind of doing my oil work on like either small panels where I can have like little racks somewhere that aren't a huge hassle, aren't in the way too much, or like working on panels where I can have like drying rack with a whole bunch of them. Anyways, I do want to eventually transition just into oil painting, but currently still acrylic, doing mostly acrylic. I draw, I do traditional comics where I'm working on Bristol board with a non-photo blue pencil under drawing. I usually skip the penciling stage. At some point later in the year I do plan to do some like work with me, paint with me, draw with me type of videos, so you'll see my process at that point. And then inking with a dip pen, and when I did Vlogmas videos last Christmas, you kind of got a bit of a sense of like the colored ink version of that. So I can link to some of those. I do some ceramics, as I have shown off in some of the Sunday show and tells. I do printmaking. Mostly late in the last couple of years I've been doing monotypes. Like basically painting using particularly Akua ink on a plexiglass plate, and then you run it through the press so it comes out. You do get like the plate imprint. I've done some stuff before that was sort of similar, but also kind of more like Shinkole. At some point I want to try that. You can't really do it with Akua inks. I've had people insist that if you add enough mag mix to Akua inks, you can make it stiff enough that it's like a traditional oil-based etching ink, and then you would be able to do the kind of like lift prints onto like mulberry paper or whatever. Somebody with a big old engine just went driving by. I don't know if that picked up. Anyways, if you heard that, that was outside on the street. But anyways, I would do lift prints, tear them out of the colored mulberry paper after it dried, and then, kind of put them underneath the plexiglass plate, paint around it, and then you very carefully put it, and you have like rice paste on it, and blah blah blah. At some point, if I can figure out a viable way to do that with Akuas, I'll probably do some reels showing that process. So far, anytime I try it, it fails at the lift print stage because Akua is very runny. So, anyways, I'm explaining things that I'm not showing, so never mind that. I might actually, what I'll probably do is, hopefully I remembered to put an image in when I was explaining about this Shinkole, that might make it as clear as mud what I was just talking about. But point is, I'm interested in different types of printmaking, different forms of monotypes, but I also love lino cuts. I've done some linos in the past. I want to actually get back into doing more lino cut work, so that may be turning up on the channel soon as well. And I did mention before about textiles. I know I have a video called Whip Parade, or Work in Progress Parade, and that was from after last year's Machosa International Summer School of the Arts, where I took a textile painting class. So Machosa International Summer School of the Arts was canceled for this year. So, but I still haven't finished my textiles project from last year, which actually also involved lino cut printing, because I was cutting lino blocks, small lino blocks to use as like stamps to print onto textile. And anyway, so hopefully we'll get back to working on that project. Maybe, I swear, at some point, eventually. So I've done textile stuff, and then a lot of sketchbook work and whatnot. But ultimately, the point is to have some products that I can then start telling you that you need, because they will totally change your life, even though it'll just be a book of comics. But, it'll change your life. You'll want to spend your money. So, anyways, that kind of gets to my next thing was next up. Books. I want to get some of the books finished. So we will start having some content related to that. And then, as I said at the very beginning, I'm going to be starting a series, probably not till July, but a series where I do like a meet and greet, Monday meet and greet, or meet the character or whatever. So I'd be working on a drawing of Noah. I mean, I kind of did a little bit of this in the Vlogmas, just a wee bit, but it wasn't like planned. I think what I'll do when I actually do the videos is do the art, film it, and then I'll like write a script and do a voiceover so I don't go off on as many tangents as I have in this video, and in general, and then like speed up the working thing to fit. Kind of like, it won't be like as short as reel, because those are like 30 seconds, but you know, maybe make like a 5-minute video about Noah Thorson and his background, and then you'll see me working on a drawing of him. I guess what I should have done in that case was be drawing like a self-portrait while I talk, but anyways, whatever. So I think I still have a couple more questions, but my throat is sore, and I think I've talked more than enough to bore you all to tears. So there you go. That is your basic introduction for me, for like mid-2025, where I'm at and what I'm working on and whatnot. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video and it didn't bore you too much. Hopefully I made you chuckle at least once. I like to think I'm hilarious. I don't know that I actually am, but you know, it's one of those things where, you know, back when I was like a teenage 18-year-old bimbo and I looked like Barbie with bleach blonde hair and my titties like smushed up and half hanging on my shirt and whatnot, guys would tell me I was hilarious all the time, and they always laughed at my jokes. So I like to think I'm hilarious. And also, hey, when I used to do stand-ups, people did laugh occasionally at what the actual joke was, as opposed to just laughing at me. But obviously this has not been like a formal stand-up bit with, you know, a point and really tight writing and rehearsed so that it's right down to word by word. Anyways, so there's my long-winded, who the hell is this broad, channel introduction. And we will see you in future videos, although you probably will. I think we'll go back, generally speaking, to where you won't see me. I am not wearing makeup, and my hair is a frickin' mess. But hey, anyways, thanks for watching. The sun seems to have come out, so certainly on the viewfinder it looks like light explosion and shadow. But anyways, I have talked long enough, and I think I need to go like take a Ricola. Not because I'm coming down with the flu or anything like that. I hope, please Lord. But because my throat is not... You'd think with the amount of talking I do in general that my throat would be used to it by now, but every so often it's like, oh, you're actually filming something? Let's make him talk like that. Anyways, enough. We'll see you next time. Bye.